Hello everyone and welcome to my stream of Advance Wars for Game Boy Advance. And honestly, the only reason I'm playing Advance Wars for Game Boy Advance is because of world conditions. In fact, at the time of this recording, which is May 23rd, 2022, Nintendo has postponed the release of the Switch game, Advance Wars Reboot Camp 1 and 2, indefinitely because of world conditions. And I mean, I don't want to come across as being insensitive, because legit, I actually know people who are Russian, and I know people who are Ukrainian at the same time. And in truth, in war, both sides lose. And in fact, when I visited the Republic of Georgia, so not the state of Georgia, but halfway around the world, the Republic of Georgia, the country that borders Turkey, Armenia, Russia, as well as Azerbaijan, you meet people, right? Russians, Ukrainians, and so on. And so really, I don't want to, like I said, not trying to come across as insensitive, but at the same time, it is Nintendo being Nintendo and deciding not to release a game such as this. But moving on, it has been forever since I have had any type of show and tell item. So I would love to show off my Advance Wars collection because they are so precious few. So this particular game that we are currently going to be streaming, Advance Wars, as well as there was another second game, Advance Wars 2, Black Hole Rising. Beyond that, the series then jumped to Nintendo DS, and therefore we have Advance Wars Dual Strike. Now, these three games are basically connected. Now, you don't actually need to know really the story because, I mean, the stories are pretty good, but it's mainly the tactical strategy games that there's conflict, there's maps, there's units, so let's go. And honestly, I'm not exactly sure why this game happened. Advance Wars Days of Ruin, the very final Advance Wars game to ever be released, also on DS. And this is a bizarre departure. And in fact, I mean, if you were just to compare the two, right? The first three games are kind of like these, happy-go-lucky, stupid slapstick comedy, Marvel mediocre superhero movies. And then this is like your most darkest, most depressing DC comics right here. I mean, it's amazing in its own right. I have so much commentary for this, but this has one epic story. I'm not even joking. But at the same time, at its core, of course, the absolutely amazing and fun tactical strategy games. So that's it. Those are the only 4 Advance Wars games to really ever exist, which, if you look at the screen right here, Intelligent Systems makes both Advance Wars and Fire Emblem. So it might be the case that I'm a little bit salty over Fire Emblem by virtue of that's the only thing Intelligence Systems actually makes anymore. And both games feature like that permanent death. And I mean, in Fire Emblem, it's way too overboard. I don't even know if I'll ever even stream any Fire Emblem games just because I really am not a fan of them. I own and have played and beaten 4, but honestly, Advance Wars is just so much funner. If you look at the Advance Wars games, the underlying permanent death feature makes so much more sense because you have really expendable, nameless, faceless units and you're pushing around. I mean, it's like the game of chess, right? We do not have names or personalities or dialogues attached to the pawns, bishops, rooks, knights, and we don't have to watch animations when it comes to, oh, my pawn is taking your pawn. No, it's just a strategy game. And so when it comes to this, if you lose units, it's no big deal. Whereas in Fire Emblem, it's extremely frustrating. Sometimes you're trying to keep everyone alive, right? It's frustrating. You invest an hour and a half on a map, and inevitably, due to bad RNG, maybe there's a double attacking character, maybe they're equipped with a killer blade, that is a high critical attack ratio, maybe they have high speed and high luck so that they would be more likely to land critical hits, and maybe they just happen to attack one of your characters that has low health, low defense, or both, and bam, 2 critical hits in a row, and your character is dead. So you have this moral dilemma. Okay, do I restart so I can try to keep this character alive? Doesn't matter. Why do people make Fire Emblem games? The bigger question is, why do people like Fire Emblem games? I have no idea. But Advance Wars really never has that stress because, like I said, it's expendable units that perish in battle. With this game, Advance Wars, I actually have a pretty unique story of how I obtained it. So at some point in my life, we were going on vacation to sea. It had something to do family related. And in this very long drive, I knew we were passing through a specific town that I knew had either Walmart or Kmart. I don't even remember which, because here's the crazy thing. Ever since then, and before that time, I have never been in the store. Ever. And yet that one day, we were driving by, and for some reason I just thought, hey, I think surely they will have Advance Wars in there. So I asked my parents if we could stop, we'd go in. Sure enough, they had the game, which was like on my watch list. I was highly anticipating playing this, and I bought it. And so it was very interesting because that whole trip, it was like the most memorable thing of really me just playing through Advance Wars for the first time. Another interesting thing about not only this, but Advance Wars 2, both for Game Boy Advance. On the Game Boy Advance hardware, there's very little CPU power that you could use for the AI. And so honestly, in the first two games, the AI is laughably bad. In fact, it is so bad, it's predictably bad. You can have the AI play into your hands by simply putting things in the correct orientation. You will be able to predict what the computer will do and therefore have a strategy against that. So you're like always setting these mouse traps, as it were, and they consistently get put in the mouse traps, and then you snap off the little mouse head, and it's really easy to kind of progress through these games. One thing though is both Fire Emblem and Advance Wars, it is true, when you have unit-to-unit interaction, there's animation. Of course, you can turn it off on both. So for sure, in Advance Wars 1 and 2, all of my animations are off. All of them. One thing though that was really interesting about Advance Wars Dual Strike is actually if you click your touch screen at any time during the unit-to-unit animation, it'll skip. So actually what was really cool is I never had to turn off the animations for this game because I skipped most of them, but every once in a while, it is fun to watch. Like if it's like the important thing, if it's the last move, if it's a boss, and then you can see it and then watch your victory, but thankfully not have to elongate the already long matches. One drawback with the Advance Wars games is usually the best maps, right? The most fun, the most challenging, you don't really get until the end of the game. And in fact, sometimes it might be the case that your boss stages, I have like various save files specifically set aside for that, just so that if I want to fight that specific challenging stage, I do so I don't have to play through the whole game, because admittingly, a lot of the intro levels are so basic, you can almost have prescribed moves to a S ranking victory. Maybe it's the case that only infantry are pitted against infantry, and a lot of the early courses sometimes are a little bit still in the tutorial mode. One fascinating thing about the North American release of Advance Wars, because evidently this is known as Famicom Wars in Japan, and there was a long history of this type of sort of strategy, and so Japanese players were actually quite familiar with this. However, this was the first thing for North Americans, right? Advance Wars. And so how would you suddenly drop down into Americans' laps this kind of entire franchise that really Japan was very familiar with? So in this game, there's actually a whole, it's kind of like a game within a game, but it's like an expansive tutorial. It's called the field training. The only time I've ever done that is during my first playthrough. So actually I have a fresh save file on my EverDrive, Game Boy Advance EverDrive. So I'm actually going to do the field training as well. It's probably going to be tediously boring, but that's okay. I want to kind of soak in all of the story and dialogues for the first time, really since the first time. But I am really excited to finally play this game again, even though I do play Advance Wars fairly often, and I hope that you find this game interesting as well.